Pardon me while I have a strange interlude. There is nothing else. Life is an obscure hobo bumming a ride on the omnibus of art. Along the misty corridors of time, and in those corridors I see figures, strange figures.
Welcome back, my friends, to the AP Strange Show. I'm your host, AP Strange. This is my show, and tonight's show is brought to you by the secret whistleblower tapes they don't want you to hear. This is whistleblower testimony on tapes. It's kind of a grab bag of a bunch of different things, and won't really be sure what you're going to get. It's going to come in an inconspicuous package, but as a special exclusive for AP Strange Show listeners, we do have a little snippet that I'm going to share with you now to kind of wet your whistle for the whistleblower tapes. So let me cue that up. Hold on a sec. So if that interests you at all, if that's something that you want to check out and get all your whistles blown, go ahead and order that and use the AP Strange Show as an order code to get your deal on it. So tonight on the show, we may be venturing into some dark territory because there's a lot that's kind of troubled me in recent times, and I feel like I wanted to get off my chest. And also, I feel like we tend to be a little bit more lighthearted on the show, and things are pretty dark out there. But I think that challenging some of the conspiracy narratives and kind of contending with what's going on with fringe culture these days and how it's changed over the years is something that's important to do. And I would rack my brains on who I could talk to about this. And what I came up with is Smiles Lewis, because Smiles is a great guy. He's the founder of Anomaly Archives. He's an informationalist extraordinaire and an archivist, and had hosted the shows PsyOp Radio, the Blue Rose Report. Currently, if you're on the Patreon for Anomaly Archives, you can get a weekly roundup of all kinds of weird news and stuff like that. And yeah, he's a wonderful guy, and I'm glad to finally meet him and have him on the show. So welcome to the show, Smiles.
Thank you for having me. Great to be here.
Yeah, it's I mean, like, I thought of you for this topic, and I'm glad that you agreed to join me for it, because as listeners may or may not know, you were kind of featured in a New York Times op-ed piece by Annie Kelly, and it was kind of, I guess, at the time, I kind of felt like it was almost a post-mortem on QAnon and like how conspiracy culture had gone mainstream and how much it had changed over the years. And I thought it would be something that's kind of interesting to revisit now as we fast forward from 2022, 2023-ish to 3 years later, because the news cycle moves so damn fast these days.
It sure does. It sure does.
But yeah, I mean, it's just kind of, I guess my first question for you would be, what the hell is going on, Smiles?
Yeah, that's the question we wake up to each day, some new horror, and wondering what the hell is the latest craziness coming out of the current administration, and what's the response to it from the people that we hope would be defending us, and what the rest of the world is thinking, because they're even more estranged from our experience. Yeah, what is happening? We have a little man boy running wild and having his second term not in a row. As you said earlier, we had a little bit of respite to kind of reflect back, but now we're back in the thick of it, and in some ways, it seems like it's the same old graft, only on 11, Spinal Tap
Mm,
style. But in other ways, it just feels like we've gone so far down, so many different bifurcations in the timeline that I don't know that we can ever get out of the rabbit hole.
yeah,
Um, um, in the early days post 9/11, um, I really, that was the thing that was the JFK for me and my generation, was where were
yeah,
you when that happened, and how dramatically it may have impacted your perception of reality. And I really have entertained ever since then this idea that we went down some kind of alternate timeline, that was a significant bifurcation point. And yeah, we are just so branched off from there, so far afield from any kind of sense of normalcy. And so, yeah, let's take a breath
yeah,
and see what we can decode or decipher from that.
yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, I mean, and that was a very dark time. I mean, for me, I think I had just gone to college when that happened, so I I remember that pretty starkly because it was like the whole world changed right as I was in that liminal period anyway, just starting my first semester of college, and it was like um, it was it was dark times back then, and I think that really did kind of uh, shake things up and uh, um, yeah, a lot of the
Well, really,
conspiracy theories didn't seem so fun anymore after
yeah,
that.
I mean, that I don't want to say that event radicalized me, but it made me take more seriously a wider variety of conspiracy theories that I had already been exposed to, but might not have subscribed to. And
Yeah.
there was a time where I very much identified as a quote unquote 9/11 truther, or what I now would describe as a 9/11 skeptic, a skeptic of the mainstream narrative.
Mm.
And while I didn't entertain the most ridiculous and wild theories to normies, just that I would entertain even what to my mind was the mild ones was ridiculous. And it it just it definitely I do think it made me more susceptible to entertaining a wider variety of conspiracy theory to a point. But I think I always have tried and continue to try to maintain some sense of balance and rationality and skepticism of those conspiracy theories. But yeah, it's so it's been so strange seeing the seeds of all the things that then became part of the QAnon mythos, and which now appears to have faded away as far as the references to quote unquote QAnon, and yet the belief systems that underpinned it are just now there in the administration, part of the culture in a wider way, to the point where people are espousing things that you can very easily point to as being derivative, descended from those theories, the rise of the QAnon mythos, and they don't even know that what they're buying into is connected to that. But it's
Right.
also caused, like, the idea of blue anon, the idea of left-leaning Democrat folks believing in conspiracies, um, and then you've got these ideas of being black-pilled, and just this kind of like everybody has succumbed to some level of conspiracy theory. I would just, as an example, point to, I was pretty shocked post assassination attempt on Trump during the campaign, when so many of my left-leaning friends, acquaintances from high school who I'm not really, actively engaging with, but would, seeing them on social media, and all of a sudden they're all subscribing to a conspiracy theory about the nature of that quote unquote assassination attempt, all suspicious that it was somehow staged.
Hmm.
And I'm not going to tell you that I didn't entertain that I haven't entertained that possibility. Of course. And I'm
Yeah.
like so many others, I'm like, where's the second shooter? Like, is there somebody up on the tower? Like,
Right.
the all the same old tropes
The
resurface
grassy knoll.
of yeah,
Yeah.
the grassy knoll water tower theory,
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, we are in this kind of weird surrealist conspiracy fever dream of the spectacle, to the point where the technology has caught up with our own brain's inability to discern, to fact check our own belief systems.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, and with the rise of AI, it only gets worse because generative AI, LLMs tend to be sycophantic. So if you're leading them in a direction, it's going to pad its answer with something that it thinks you want to hear. So,
yes, yeah,
and these stories of AI psychosis that are out there now is like, it sounds as spooky as old stories about MK Ultra experiments or mind control. It's just kind of really, really, really scary times.
right. And
Yeah,
MK Ultra conspiracy theories were some of those that for the longest time, and there certainly is a spectrum of claims even in that milieu of conspiracy culture. And a great example being the whole Project Monarch idea, this idea of, um, you know, uh, sex slaves and child, the inculcation of trauma-based mind control in children. And like so many things, there's always these kernels of truth that one can verify and hunt down. But if you do research like the MK Ultra stuff, this you do find that okay, there is a spectrum. There's some folks making the wildest claims that you just can't pin down, and comes down to, well, had they convinced themselves are they having their own hallucination in terms of their belief systems and perceptions of their life, the events in their life, or is somebody manipulating them to do that, or is it part of some other mind control thing where they've had these memories instilled in them, um,
right,
and that, but the monarch mythos has proliferated to the point where it's like I have to constantly, remind people that, well, that whether or not that actually existed, it's the one thing we don't have any actual documentation for. But then you also have to, give the caveat of, oh, well, yeah, Richard Helms and his cronies destroyed huge
yeah.
amounts of the actual evidence. And so what we do have to work from definitely paints a picture that makes that not unimaginable.
Well, right, and it's kind of much better known about now, I think, in the mainstream view than it used to be. Because I mean, growing up, I always felt like MK Ultra was people treated it like, oh, that's just a conspiracy theory. That's just crazy. It's like, well, it actually happened though, and it's only been in more recent years that it seems like people are kind of recognizing that. But still, they only equate it with the LSD dosing stuff, and you're like, there were 250 sub projects that we know of, but we
Right.
don't know what a lot of them were, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah,
And I often, just as you can use the UFO as index to anything, you can use CIA mind control to paint a picture of just how many ways that horrible program and series of sub-programs seemingly affected American life in terms of the monsters that were created by it that went on to hurt other people. Um,
right.
whether it's Whitey Bulger or Ted
The
Kaczynski
Unabomber,
or
yeah,
right.
yeah,
And yeah, I do feel like it is more well known, but there was that point early on, and this kind of goes back to like the rise of the X-Files and that level of conspiracy mongering through entertainment and then melding it with the paranormal and UFOs and this just general overarching paranoia. Um, Back then, it was a constant problem where, yeah, exactly as you say, like you bring up one conspiracy that's absolutely verifiable. If anybody does just a little bit of research, they can verify it for themselves. But because they saw a fictionalized movie or TV show about it, they conclude, oh, well, that's just fiction.
Right. Yeah, and then you could go the next level up from there and say, well, that's on purpose that they seed this stuff into fiction so that no one will believe them. And then you go a level up from that, and you can kind of that's how you rabbit hole yourself. That's
Yeah.
I always like to say about the rabbit holes that you got to watch out for that tricky turn in Albuquerque
Yeah.
because you'll pop out someplace you didn't mean to go. But yeah, I think that was the thing. It's like when people talk about back when conspiracy theories were quote unquote fun. I mean, that's kind of, I think what they mean is that like it was kind of sexy. It was in the pop culture. It was X Files, and I feel like for the zine scene that you used to be a part of and stuff like that, that there was art to it too. Like I just remember like thumbing through like disinformation books and like finding little schwa stickers on things and always feeling like there was this kind of cool artsy like punk rock vibe to like an anti-authoritarian DIY kind of way of thinking about the world, right?
Yeah, I would attribute that, I think, to uh, our blessed forefathers like Robert Anton Wilson and other Discordians, and their Operation Mindfuck and things like that, where they were literally playing with these old conspiracy tropes and revitalizing them and putting them out there in ways that unfortunately did convince some of the rubes, but it's I was going to say before I said all that, I was thinking, well, yeah, there didn't seem to be as bad of potential consequences to the fictionalization of this material, but I obviously even a little naive, just because obviously things like the copycat effect have been around for probably the entirety of hominid history.
Yeah.
We're all just monkeys imitating each other, and our brains are these meme machines that just get hooked on little jingles and mantras and are all about repeating things, and it's all storytelling, and scary stories are very popular and get retold. But um, I do think Robert Anton Wilson, I think, is one of the earlier people who uh, through his editing of Playboy and playing around with these Illuminati conspiracies and revitalizing those to the point where that has become such a part of the pop culture that you have entire subgenres of conspiracy theorists that they focus on is the latest Illuminati symbolisms in the Super Bowl ads or halftime shows and things like that, and all of which unfortunately feeds into this you know this uh, belief driven lack of understanding of art, I think, and kind of a, re- a refutation of the artistic process.
Mm.
Um, while at the same time, I mean, I'm well aware, as you say, maybe there's something to seeding these ideas in fiction so that people will just write it off as conspiracy, um, as just fiction, and not give it any other deeper looking into. But and there are these other traditions in the conspiracy culture of the revelation of the method and the
Mm.
idea of the powers that be have to um, you know
They
have to
manufacture consent by having it out there because
exact. I was just thinking, yeah, of
yeah,
that famous phrase. Yes.
yeah,
That they broadcast what they're going to do to you before they do to you, and that somehow absolves them of their maybe their own guilt or whatever, or just what's the other phrase? The pre-programming.
yeah, predictive programming.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, right. This just this idea of oh, so much science fiction ends up becoming science fact. Well, you know, which reminds me of conversations I've had with friends like Greg Bishop and others over the years about telling them about, oh well, Alex Jones was talking about this before everybody else knew about it, and it's like, well, maybe he was reading science magazines where that
right.
he's getting a little ahead of the curve and just he's spinning it in such a way to sell sell supplements and fear. And I think there's something to that. This idea, Alex Jones is just a dark futurist, that
Yeah,
you can see. It's just like science fiction and why science fiction writers have been employed by the military-industrial complex to try to game ideas for possible scenarios. And then on the other hand, my wife and I have joked many a time about maybe it wasn't a good idea to fetishize dystopian sci-fi films or to worship Philip K. Dick the way we have, because
right.
fuck, we've manifested this shit. Maybe this focus
Yeah,
is hyper focusing on surveillance states and authoritarian alternate timelines has helped further us down those roads. I don't necessarily honestly believe that, but it's worth commenting about, perhaps.
well, yeah. I mean, one could also say that PKD was just the prophet for our times, like, and saw it all coming, But uh, yeah, I mean, this surveillance state is something that really still bugs me because it's like I'm just barely old enough to remember a time that there wasn't a camera on you everywhere you went, you know?
And that every device that we had somehow tracks us and is transmitting our information. Yeah, it
Yeah,
is
they used to talk
wild.
about chipping people in the 90s. They were going to put an RFID chip in you or something, or like
Yeah.
be able to track your movements. And now everybody like willingly carries a device that has a GPS tracker in it, right?
And
So,
yeah, and I mean so many religious based conservative conspiracy theories back in the day, centered on this idea of the mark of the beast and this idea that you'll have to have the mark in order to buy and sell or to travel. And it of course that was interpreted for a while as the barcode was interpreted as a manifestation of that, and
mhm,
the chip was of great concern. But yeah, as you say, now it's all just willingly done by all of us, and we all feel so naked without our tracking device,
right. Yeah, and I mean it's sad. I mean I'm there with everybody else. It's not like I'm any better, but it was funny because I was gonna let my son take the car to drive to his mom's house for the weekend, and his phone wasn't working and I was like, I just don't feel safe letting him go with the car because he's a new driver,
Hmm.
and I'm like, I said that to my boss. He goes, "Remember back when nobody had a phone?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it was, geez, like that's true. Like it used to be normal to just get in the car and drive and not have a.
Yeah.
You'd have to find a payphone if you needed a phone, right? So yeah,
Yeah, and
wild.
that those kinds of examples just permeate our existence now. I was uh, tabling for the nonprofit at an event we were doing outreach at last year, and my phone on the way there started glitching, and I could no longer use it, and so I had to use another person's phone, and so my wife is getting texts from a phone that she didn't recognize, and it's saying it's me, and she
Right.
was not believing it, and she's texting my phone, which I can't respond to. I could read her text, but I couldn't respond to it. And she's like, I'm getting weird texts from such and such number. And yeah, it's weird how all this has come to pass. And yeah, maybe PKD was I mean, his whole one of his main experiences was experiencing two different timelines simultaneously. The empire never ended, Rome never fell. This idea, one of many. He, like Terence McKenna, like espoused so many different ideas, hypotheses, interpretations of this thing we call reality, and it seems quite probable to me that he was the kind of experiencer who um, became unstuck in time and was likely, really seeing patterns of that repeat themselves in terms of that authoritarianism and that surveillance state. But
Yeah.
flashback to right before 9/11, there was a massive pushback, and at least to my recollection, in many municipalities across the United States, of getting rid of just regular surveillance cameras, traffic cameras, and police surveillance cameras. But 9/11, of course, threw that everything into reverse and accelerated that surveillance state. And that was even before, we had things like iPhones, but and now fast forward to, the time we're living in now with these flock cameras and the triangulation of data and Palantir, and it is insane,
Yeah.
how so much of the things that so many people on the left and the right were legitimately, rightfully paranoid about have come to pass, and yet it is practically nothing to the majority of the culture.
Right. People just
Um,
shrug. It's just like it's kind of I was accustomed to sounding like the crazy person back then because I was saying this isn't okay, and like now I sound like the crazy person because I'm like, you're all okay with this? A lot of people aren't, but they're like, well, what are we gonna do about it, right?
yeah,
So it is kind of crazy. Well, it's kind of really crazy, but um, yeah, as it seems like the war on terror was really the linchpin for a lot of that. It's just people started willingly giving up um, little civil liberties here and there, or understandings of privacy because they wanted safety, right? So that's um, it always struck me how much the war on terror was fueled by fear,
yeah.
right?
And there certainly were previous events with, like, Waco and Oklahoma City, and that in various ways started laying the foundation for the thing that then would accelerate after 9/11 in terms of putting into place um, uh, the mechanisms of surveillance and power that would just continue at hyper velocity afterwards. But yeah, it's like Robert Anton Wilson's Jumping Jesus and McKenna's Ingression of Novelty, and this idea of moving towards some singularity. It's like it's all this stuff is so accelerated. It feels like
Yeah,
um, I to so many degrees, it reality feels unrecognizable. Again, to invoke McKenna, um, compared to 20 years ago.
right. The whole time wave zero thing.
Right.
Uh, I always thought that was a little kooky, but now,
Yeah, I actually, a close friend of mine was very close friends with Terrence, and we were just talking, and he was saying how even McKenna, even Terrence, didn't really put that much stock in his own novelty theory, and that it was one of those things where he was just trying to find that arbitrary endpoint
mhm.
to make the pattern fit. Um, I'm certainly no expert to try to analyze his time wave theory, but yeah, I don't I think it seems a little silly in some ways. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm very open to silly ideas because, I mean, the serious ones are bumming me out these days.
Yeah, yeah. No, like I say, every day another horror. Um, yeah,
We,
I go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say because along with that whole war on terror thing, I think there was a crazy rise in propaganda and like the idea of well, there was the weird false dichotomy with you have to support the troops, so you have to be in, which meant that you had to support the ongoing war, the never-ending war over there. And it's like, well, isn't it better to support the troops by ending the war? Not having the wars in the first place. But
Right.
at the same time, it was like there was this false dichotomy with police and policing, where everybody was, from my perspective, it seemed like people were just subtly like embracing a police state without necessarily realizing that that's what they were doing, right?
Yeah.
And I always felt it, and I was like, I remember when the first time they were talking about voter IDs at polling places, when I was sitting with at dinner with my parents, I'm like, every new time the government's asking you for your ID before you do something is another step towards a complete police state situation,
Yeah.
you know. Um,
No,
so
I'm right there with you, man. I that it is that surveillance state and the potential for police state and martial law that drove so much of my fears post 9/11, and of course, and also listening to way too much Alex Jones at the time.
right.
um,
Well, he was kind of
and
local to you, huh?
yeah, I mean that's he's an amazing story of success as far as like somebody who utilized public access programming uh, to great success.
Build an
Uh,
empire.
yeah, and it was amazing to watch. It was entertaining to watch until it suddenly wasn't. And I often have talked to people about Alex in terms of how I was able to consume his material for so long and until I finally just was just like, fuck this guy. you
Right.
know um and but and again, just because I'm able to recognize what to my mind was his success and what and to somewhat admire his ability to build this media empire.
Mm.
I don't respect using fear or making it off the backs of selling supplements and that sort of thing, but Austin Access, community access television in and of itself is an amazing thing. Austin was one of the earliest adopters, had some of the craziest programming that is part and parcel to why I think Austin got the reputation of being so weird.
Yeah.
And he was just one part of that. And so any night of the week, you could, if you had cable, you could do your slider and go to one of six or however many access channels that we had at the time, and see just the craziest homegrown weird shows. Some of which were just traditional, and others were Bible thumping wackos with a toilet seat around their heads. It was just crazy, and that's not Alex Jones. Uh, but or you could actually see amazing comedians like Bill Hicks, and but part of that process was anything that you produced using access equipment you could make money on. You just had to air it at least once on access television. And so once
Mm.
you aired it, you're free to sell it. Of course, this was also the period of time where he was doing that kind of Mystery Science Theater 3000 gimmick of keep circulating the tapes. He was
Right.
encouraging people to duplicate not just the videos that the show that he did almost nightly, but also the documentaries that he started making, which that took on a life of their own. And by the time we flash forward to say the 2016 election, his media empire had grown to where he had a whole slew of writers, a massive office complex, which he still has, um, and um, and was producing all this content. uh, Love it or hate it, a lot of it I hate, but yeah, then it just, like so many things we're talking about, it just totally went to shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah. Anyway, I'll cut that off right there and just say,
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think I first became aware of him because of the documentary he did about Bohemian Grove and sneaking in there and stuff.
Yep. Which, of course, the only reason he really did that was because he was pushed into it by John Ronson, the guy who wrote The Men Who Stare at Goats.
Yeah, yep.
Um, and yeah, so he was encouraged by him, and he and his cameraman Mike Hansen went in. And if you haven't seen it, there's a really good YouTube channel called More Perfect Union. That's a very left-leaning investigative news channel that mostly is focused on, environmental issues and the negative impacts of data centers and how all the negative things surrounding that. But they actually put out not too recently their own documentary episode on Bohemian Grove, and I was a little disappointed that they kind of added a kind of kooky conspiracy spin to it, but the data they were talking about, they were doing the kind of thing that they went much further than Alex ever did in the most positive way in terms of like showing, oh, well, here's the latest membership list, and here's, who was at this year's event, and they all were at this lodge, and guess what? This new legislation that benefits them came out, 6 months later, and
Yeah,
um,
that's the kind of stuff that you need to point at, and like that legitimizes what the conspiracy narrative should like ultimately is. Like when you're trying to like speak truth to the power structure that's there and
absolutely.
actually affect change, you need to be able to have a logical narrative,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And his logical narrative was Moloch, child sacrifice, that it's not, it could be a mock sacrifice, but it could also be real, was the implication. And that, of
Mm,
course, led people like the Phantom Patriot to break into the Bohemian Grove. Thankfully for everybody on, its off seasons, so there wasn't really anybody there but cleaning crews, I think. But that guy ended up going to jail, and he there was a whole weird episode where he was in Austin and was like leaving his hand-drawn Phantom Patriot comic books at the
mm.
Access TV station for Alex to read, and Alex was just like, this guy's a wacko. I'm not gonna have anything to do with him. But that guy went on to again break into the place and was armed, I think, with a crossbow and fireworks. So, still
Wow.
somebody could have been hurt. All
Yeah.
of which is just again to get back to this the danger zone of the copycat effect, and something you said on your recent um, uh, appearance with Erica Lukes and Jack Brewer is, the import of how we phrase things and try to minimize the potential for people to take those words either out of context or too literally and to enact them. And that's something that unfortunately people like Alex have never done, and that's why he ended up in those
Yeah.
lawsuits. And it's like the larger your audience becomes, the more careful you really need to be in terms of not saying the kinds of things that 1 to 20% of your audience who are mentally ill are going to act on and do something horrible about based
Y-
on.
Yeah, yeah, because you can draw a direct line, and I mean, nowadays people try to make all kinds of arguments for people being in charge of their own decisions, and like I feel an argument you often hear from the right wing is just like, people's words aren't. There's no such thing as like stochastic terrorism, where you could say something and people will follow up on it, and but they change their tune real quick when it's one of their guys getting shot or shot at.
Yeah, yeah.
um,
At the same time, I mean, this is the whole discussion about, where does the responsibility of the artist lie? And, obviously there's been plenty of movies that have been tried to be suppressed, or books that have been tried to be suppressed because they were considered to be dangerous because they seemed, in some cases, literally did inspire violence or suicide or what have you. I mean, before the copycat effect, there was what was called the Werther effect after the book. I forget the title, but the something of young Werther, which was a book that apparently was causing people to commit suicide, and the sorrows of young Werther, I think maybe, and
mhm.
um, and then you get into, like the Clockwork Orange, being withdrawn by the director because of the violence that was occurring. And, I'm no advocate for censorship. As much as as much as I'm horrified by, some people's expression of their right to free speech, I am one of those people that uh, supports it pretty much to the point where I'm disgusted with myself for being a supporter of that. But
Yeah.
I do really feel strongly about that. But I also recognize, again, this effects that we're talking about, it's far too easy to influence people. I mean, it's something else you referenced in your recent interview, the X-Files episode. That's my absolute favorite, Jose Chung's From Outer Space, where the character, the writer, is talking about the power of hypnosis, and it's
Yeah.
just mere words
Right.
can cause somebody to go into a trance and do things that they wouldn't normally do, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, the point I was making there was, and I've said this a number of times, mind control in media and in fiction is always dressed up. In real life, it's much simpler, much more subtle, and way more effective than people will ever realize. You know, and sometimes those narratives, I think most of the time, they take on a life of their own that people wouldn't expect. But in other times, it seems really kind of calculated, where I don't necessarily feel like it's a conspiracy theory per se, but it's definitely in the propaganda realm. Getting back to the whole propaganda thing, I don't know if you've ever seen this, but like the Punisher logo with like the thin blue line and superimposed on it, and it's like, wait, do you people know who the Punisher is though?
Yeah.
Frank Castle.
And
He's a
it's basically a
psychopathic
death's head,
killer,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. I'm like, so we're in support, like support the blue, support the police, because and also let them kill you is what the sticker says to me. You know,
Yeah.
uh, so there, yeah, there's a point at which some of this stuff really goes off the rails, and with the comic book stuff too, it's something I've looked into extensively is the Joker, um, where it's almost like people idolize the Joker from the Heath Ledger version of it, and it's like I don't think that's the point of that.
Yeah. No, I there is I forget what there's something my wife and I were just watching where it just reminded us of that whole thing. Like you can be trying to produce a work of art or fiction that is trying to get one central point across that's, that has a moral and ethical compass. And if you make the villain, too attractive, too entertaining, too iconic,
Charismatic, yeah,
charismatic, yes,
yeah,
magnetic charisma, then that can be something that again people will latch onto, and suddenly that's the most memorable thing to a portion of the population. Um, it's it's hard to know how to think of walking those lines as an artist or as a civil servant, because again, I don't want to, I don't like seeing things banned. Uh,
right, yeah,
um, but yeah, it's important to acknowledge both sides of this argument, I think. But yeah, and and yet here we are, you know, where uh, people who are describing themselves as free speech advocates are the sole owners of some of the most racist platforms on the
yeah.
planet.
Oh, not
Um,
just an advocate, an absolutist.
yeah,
Elon Musk called himself a free speech absolutist and then proceeded to silence everybody that disagreed.
right. Or that publishes his plane's itinerary, whatever.
Right.
I mean, I think about the flip side of that, of, with recent assassinations and assassination attempts against judges and politicians, and the whole idea of concealing their making them undoxable, making, concealing their addresses and stuff like that. And I'm like, the time we're in, I don't necessarily disagree with that. But again, that flies in the face of what I've said just a few minutes ago in terms of, not suppressing certain things. But um, you know, just you mentioned earlier, like rewatching um, or re-listening to one of the past psyop radio shows. The one I think you mentioned was from during the pandemics,
Yeah.
2020, and yeah, if I remember correctly, we probably hadn't done one before then for maybe a year or more. I forget exactly. I think I was saying off air that we um, we started doing the show weekly in 2006, but we took frequent breaks, holidays, and then there'd be long hiatuses, and then we'd stop, and then we'd start back up again, and sometimes it was because of certain things that were happening in the world. We're like, Mac, Miles, we gotta do a show.
Right.
Um, but and that was to my recollection, that was the reason we started back up, was because I mean, my God, we'd already, lived through, I guess, swine flu, near miss.
Hmm.
And that, I remember at the time felt like there could be something afoot that was trying to, utilize, was it Rahm Emanuel's "Never Let a Good Crisis Go to Waste" or whatever. Uh,
Yeah.
and you know, I don't know. I don't subscribe to certain theories of the origins of COVID, but like so many of my past approaches, I've tried to take an agnostic and open-minded um, look at these different things and wonder, and try to just hold multiple views in my mind, and um, use it to navigate the world and keep myself and my loved ones safe as I can, which is
Hmm.
seems really hard sometimes, man.
Yeah,
Um,
it does.
and
Yeah.
you as a parent, I can only imagine how much harder that is. Um, I don't have kids,
Yeah.
so
It's
it's one
it's
less
tough.
worry, but I do worry about other people's kids, you know.
Yeah. I mean, he's a good kid and he's got a good attitude and um I don't worry about him specifically, but like that whole generation is just um very strange to think about. Like I try to think about what would have happened if I had a pandemic when I was in school and I couldn't go to school. I had to go to class through a computer screen and stuff. It's really, really strange to consider. Um, but that time too was a lot of encroachment by the police state. I was very I had a moment when the there were the protests around the George Floyd murder and then the
Hmm.
riots and the police where the police were shooting press members with
Yeah,
non I don't even like saying non-lethal
less than
like
lethal,
less
still
than lethal,
damaging.
yeah,
Yeah,
stuff that really still messes people up,
totally.
um intentionally targeting the press. And I'm like I, I like really kind of shook me, and I'm like, why this though? Because there's so many horrible things going on, and so
Yeah,
many. Every once in a while there's one that really hits me, and I'm like, I think it's just this means we're cooked. We're just cooked if they're shooting press members, especially foreign ones, like a woman from Australia that's reporting gets shot by the beanbag rounds and everything. Because you would think another country would that would be a diplomatic incident. It's
you'd
not just our
think. Yeah,
reporters, but it's like the fact that people weren't even really registering that. People around me, people on social media, didn't seem like that was the focus. I'm like, that's 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 one of the amendments. That's in the that's in the Bill of Rights. Like we need the press. They need to be able to do their job, right?
yeah.
That's um,
Well, and
but
but when the president's demonizing the press and weaponizing his constituents, Some portion of them are the police.
Yeah, and that's
uh,
what makes all of this so weird is that, for years, a lot of us, in the fringes of and having weird interests and maybe a conspiratorial mindset would say, well, yeah, the mainstream media is going to tell you this and that, and like you don't believe what you hear on the news, but you did to some for a lot of things,
yeah.
but you didn't think like the weatherman was lying to you about whether it was going to be partly cloudy tomorrow. But
And now we have people blowing up and dismantling weather radar systems around the country because
oh
they
yeah, that
believe
is
it's all
happening,
part.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It,
The harp story came back with a vengeance, I think. The whole harp mythos.
yeah, yeah. I don't know if you saw that recent article that where the journalist went up to Alaska and got a grand tour, and they really talked about the influence that
Yeah,
conspiracy has had on their just existing and doing their work. And I mean, I again on PsyOp Radio we had on a writer who was published by David Hatcher Childress's um, Adventures Unlimited Press.
there was a
I
lot of
forget.
fun stuff there.
Yeah, well, and the particular writer we had on was the one that had written several weather conspiracy oriented books, and then what so we had him on to talk about, and it's one of these things. It's like yes, humanity has always tried to influence the weather, and the military has definitely done their share of absolute manipulation for various strategic reasons, and the whole cloud seeding is still a thing, especially here in Texas and other dry states. Um, and yet, we're not supposed to think about or worry about or talk about the possibilities of something like HARP.
Mhm.
And again, I think it's important to just say, well, I don't know, I'm not going to use the. We're just asking questions.
Right.
Do your own
Well, it,
research.
it almost feels like you need to have a caveat about a lot of this stuff because you're like,
Absolutely.
well, I think it's worth looking at, but I don't necessarily believe what all those guys are saying or
Right.
these guys over here.
Yeah.
Like don't at me for this. Like don't don't cancel me because
No, I mean my I will say my co-host Mac White often felt very much more comfortable than I did speaking more speculatively about
right,
these things, and so I to some degree I tried to act as his more skeptical foil. And he's older than me, and he'd been, JFK was his 9/11,
right.
except that of course he experienced both. And those were frequent topics of discussion on the show. But yeah, and I remember when the Katrina happened, and there was so much speculation. I think even trying to think of the UFO researcher. I feel like maybe I don't know. I don't think it was Greer. I thought there was some fairly popular UFO researcher who also was promoting the whole HARP may have moved or steered Katrina. But I could be misremembering a different. There's so many hurricanes, and then
Yeah,
but yeah, I mean yeah, flash forward now, and you literally have members of Congress openly saying that the Democrats were using HARP to, pour rain down on red states and stuff like that, and um, yeah.
yeah. Which makes no sense because what the DNC has a direct line to this. What?
Get me Harp on the phone.
No, it's all Obama. Obama's in a underground bunker somewhere controlling everything.
Right.
It's probably that's the way they think of it. Yeah. Um, but I mean, that kind of does get to, and probably I feel like something I wanted to kind of preface with, but it's good to get to it whenever is just what does it even mean anymore to when you say conspiracy or conspiracy theory? Because speaking of language being important, I've seen the term conspiracy theory just get used to mean anything kind of weird. So like I'm no conspiracy theorist, but I think my house is haunted. It's like why would that be a conspiracy? It's like really strange how people use the language, and then people will say conspiracy when they mean conspiracy theory, and then you're not even really sure what they would mean by conspiracy theory, right? So, and like, there's no doubting that there's conspiracies in the world. Like, the world is built on conspiracies. Everybody's conspiring all the time,
All the
you know.
time. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Um,
yeah, I mean, what does it even mean?
I I don't even know other than it's obviously used as a pejorative and used it has in its own right been kind of weaponized, and of course there's the whole line of thinking that it was quote unquote created or pushed by the CIA to discredit JFK assassination theorists back in the day. Um, and in fact, I think that claim was mainly touted by a book that may have been published by the UT University of Texas Press. I could be misremembering. There's two books that came out around the same
Yeah, I never
time
knew
that I
where that
often.
originally came from. And I've said
Um,
it before, and then I'm like, actually, I don't know that that's true, but this is something people say all the
it
time. So,
well, I remember when I first heard this, they did provide some citations for like documents that they'd gotten through FOIA, I think. And again, I'm not really sure which of the two books I'm thinking of first had this, but it makes perfect sense to me.
right.
You know,
Yeah,
and I think clearly as we've learned more and more over the decades about the CIA's heinous activities, there's no idea that's too crazy for the CIA, or just substitute your other least favorite three-letter alphabet agency. Um, I mean, there are so many hundreds of you know intelligence agencies now in this country alone. But
right,
um, yeah, I think it's mainly just now it's just kind of like so many words has become a throwaway term that yeah, it doesn't even mean anything. Like you're saying, it doesn't mean anything anymore, except when you try to use it on your enemy to discredit them.
right. Yeah, because I got the sense at one point in the past decade, like, what people are referring to as conspiracy theorists these days give uh, us old school tinfoil hat wears a bad name,
Totally, yeah. I mean, I and there's so many. I remember, around the same time, I got, I'm not really sure when I first like became aware of John Judge, who, for those who aren't familiar, is I would say a left-leaning conspiracy theorist. Only again, I don't, I hate to use that phrase, but he was, and this is why for a long time, for decades, I've been promoting the use of the word parapolitics, and even that now has, among certain people, that's considered a pejorative.
Yeah,
I always liked the idea of parapolitics and the parapolitical as an alternative to conspiracy theory, as just a phrase to describe these things. Covert operations, corruption, and cover-ups is another one. Another phrases that describe these things. But yeah,
I've
John
heard
Judge was
like
this.
exopolitics too. Sometimes people
I
say, and
never
yeah,
liked exopolitics.
yeah,
That's personally just because it was mainly being used by a particular extraterrestrial hypothesis oriented UFO personality. I mean, as a word, and it's got, fine, but like, it always was colored for me by that.
right, yeah,
Um,
okay.
but
I'm just throwing it
if
out there as another, variable term that I've
sure,
heard before. Yeah, yeah. So, yeah,
but John Judge had over the years created his organization COPA, Coalition on Political Assassination, that covered, the big three, JFK, RFK, MLK, and so much more. And it was kind of, this mostly left-leaning conspiracy research outlet, nonprofit. And when I became aware of his material, I just was like, oh my God, this guy is so much more in line with what I'm thinking than, say, an Alex Jones. And um, so, there is a through line of thinkers of various political stripes, who've tried to analyze those things, covert operations, corruption, and cover-ups. And it's easy for anybody to kind of, find their information channels, more easy than it ever was, that's for sure. We just are so saturated now with echo chamber. Everybody's got their own podcast or channel, and putting out their own content. And
Hmm.
um, it's, but even without that, it just as we say, it's so infiltrated the very mechanisms of power now. It, like you say, it seems like conspiracy theory just doesn't, as a term, really mean much anymore. Um,
Oh, right. Because along with efforts to get transparency around the big three assassinations of the 60s, was RFK Jr. was involved with a lot of that. And it's like, look at him now. You
yeah,
know?
yeah. Someone who, did some work that a lot of people on the left rightly could be proud of in terms of, trying to, do
For ecological
environmentalism work.
stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. But yeah, honestly, so I haven't said this yet, and I'll just say I might as well, because it just popped into my head because of my thoughts on him. As far as I haven't really researched him that deeply, and I will absolutely admit that there early on, when I knew he was running, I was kind of interested in him as a potential candidate. But yeah, he really has come to exemplify what I describe as the first conspiracy, which is class war.
Hmm.
And that's not to say that I'm a communist or a socialist, but I really just feel all this conspiracy and corruption, it all comes down to abuse of power. And who has the power? Well, it's always been, generally speaking, the people with money,
Yeah.
and people
And
with money have a
generationally.
wide
Yeah.
generational money. Yes,
Yeah.
the big oldest richest families, and these corporations. And is there really much of a difference? But uh
I
and
thought there
so
was a word for the marriage of corporations and the state, but I don't know.
yes, yes, starts with an F, maybe. Um, gets used a lot these days.
Right.
Yeah, but to me, I've tried to express to some folks that, like, yeah, to me, the first conspiracy is the class conspiracy, which is just that the people who have the power want to keep it, and the people who have the power are the ones with the money, who are manipulating all the systems of power. And that some of them can be right leaning, some of them can be left leaning, some of them put their money on both sides of the stupid
Hmm.
dualistic left foot right foot system that we're caught in,
Yeah.
and that I think is largely responsible for why we are where we are. But with regard to RFK Jr., so much of the things that have come out that are just like, what the fuck, man? Like,
Right.
all these different crazy animal horror stories with him.
Roadkill,
And
playing with
yeah,
roadkill. Yeah.
and it all just reeks of money privilege, and having grown up in a reality that to you or I is largely just a fantasy world.
Mhm.
Um, and
And with the trauma thrown in of his father being killed, like that you can have some sympathy for that, but a lot of it, as you say, it's like growing up inside Camelot and being able to, like, I don't know, torture animals or sexually assault people and like have it cleaned up and covered
yeah,
up and hidden behind closed doors, like
yep, yep.
yeah,
Uh, and here we are, like, and that's one of the things I think that's so uh darkly familiar, uh, uh with the Epstein files that finally being partially, what, 2% released, these massive amounts of material that's out there that is, like, I'm sure is an ontological shock for so many, that it's and One of my a political friend who has herself been somebody I would consider a conspiracy theorist, but not really. Um, she texted me out the blue the other day. She's like, "I think I owe all our conspiracy theorist friends a number of apologies." And
Well,
I'm like,
you know,
"What prompted that?" And she's like, "The world right now."
yeah, I mean, I think that's all some of us want to hear, but like there are people that don't deserve any credit because the first thing a lot of people did was search. If listeners don't know, there somebody developed a way of searching the Epstein emails as though it's an inbox.
Yeah,
So there were people that immediately searched pizza. They wanted to find pizza in there,
right.
and then they were trying to parade around, being like, "Oh, Pizzagate was right. Holy shit, those people were." And it's like, no, no, they were talking about pizza. Like eye on the ball here, man. Like what we're talking about is a group of rich, sick people that know they can get away with stuff, and like a lot of it's sad to say, but like a lot of this stuff is sensationalized, and the more salacious and horrifying elements of abuse are all people are talking about. And to me, like maintaining the structure of power that allowed that to be the case is a lot of the reason that we're in the straits that we're in now, because you're talking about connections that Epstein had across the world, financing things that are related to, um, you know, weapons sales and drug running and all kinds of other stuff. Like this is a network of crime, and
Yeah,
it's people that have no allegiance to political parties or even nations, or not really. The people that are involved in these networks are in it for money, power, and being able to do whatever they want and get away with
yeah,
it.
yeah,
So it's not as simple as saying like this nation or this group of people, or this political party, or the simplest conspiracies are the ones that involve the fewest amount of people, and
yeah,
the elite is a pretty small group, and the criminal elite that are baldly criminal the way Epstein and associates were is even smaller. This is not there's a handful of players that are affecting have affected enough uh, that have shaped the world that we currently live in now, and they would love for you to be chasing every celebrity name that's in those files, like that's in
yeah,
those emails. They'd love for you to be going, oh wow, like Whoopi Goldberg was in here. Why was Whoopi Goldberg mentioned once? Like why was Trump mentioned a million times?
yeah. Yeah, it's this moneyed class um that is so often like working behind the scenes, and this gets back to the whole Bohemian Grove thing of people who are of a certain level of power and privilege that affords them, a ring of protection, and also to hobnob with the other movers and shakers, and who often are thinking seemingly at the level of, you know, super villains.
Yeah, right.
They're
Yeah.
trying to they think they know the best for the rest of us and the world, and are trying to create the future that they think is best. And we see a lot of that in the Epstein files, in terms of him and so many others obsession on reproduction, and eugenics,
Hmm.
and creating a master race, or their idea of what they think is a better genetic line, and as you say, creating what we see so much in the technocracy movement that is dominating our current reality, with these really ultra rich who have no who have fascist Nazi leanings, and really don't see any good at all in democracy and the rule of the people. Um, and it just the new neo-modern feudalism seems to be their vision of paradise. Um, and that to me, this is the core thread that goes back through, the earliest conspiracy work. Only, whether it's the Birchers, demonizing communism and
Mhm.
seeing, Reds under the bed and everywhere else, or others seeing, just the rise of totalitarianism and total surveillance and the police state and the stepping stones towards, a real ratcheting up of towards either uh 1984, or I always leaned towards there's that famous speech by Huxley where he's like, I always thought that, um Orwell just didn't quite get it right. It was that we're going to be made to love our servitude.
Yeah.
It's going to be the Huxley's Brave New World model. um which
Well, I think they were
seeing that
both
on
right.
TV as a kid really
Yeah.
affected me.
I think they were both right, which is like the worst possible scenario.
Right, right.
No, I've said it on the show plenty of times, but Fahrenheit 451 was another one that really got to me. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's that I credit that book for my book hoarding habits.
But we have no shortage of dystopian visions of the future, unfortunately. Like I say, I worry how, because I know I was very guilty of just fetishizing some of them.
Yeah, I mean, because they're kind of cool. I mean, there's a morbid curiosity that goes with trying to imagine how it all ends. Um, and you can feel good about it, saying it's a cautionary tale, so these are the things to look out for, right? And then what you don't realize is that there are those people that are going to use it as a playbook,
Right.
as an instruction manual.
You can learn from everything. Yeah.
Yeah, it, yeah, it's pretty terrifying stuff. Um, but yeah, just to put a finer point on what I was saying about the Epstein stuff is that people do need to realize he was a financier, and like the money is the main thing he was doing, right? Like
Yeah.
the
And
like specifically hiding money and hiding, like keeping money from taxes, you know?
and the systemic abuse, that both in terms of abuse of the financial institutions and the abuse of human beings.
Right.
um yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, there's just in the last 10, 20 years, there have been just these great horrific revelations, whether it's, Jimmy Savile, or
Yeah.
that the was it the Penn State coach, where there's just, it's like,
Sandusky. Yeah.
Sandusky, where how did this stuff go on for so long? Well, that's systemic abuse, where
Right.
it becomes inculcated into the institution to just look the other way. And I,
Right.
I I've joked with folks about, I call it Miles' Law, but obviously I'm not the first to think about this, but I just feel like uh, the bigger an institution becomes, no matter if it's, raison d'etre was the protection of civil liberties and the individual, the rights of the individual, the larger that organization becomes, the less it will be able to do what its mission was, no matter how good. And I think
Mm.
that to me is the rotten core truth of what happens to institutions of all stripes, whether they're governmental, military, corporate, or religious, is they largely they succumb to the money,
Right.
or they just become about protecting, becoming insular and protective of their institutional. I mean, that's, I think, just part and parcel of them trying to maintain their existence.
Yeah, it gets kind of Kafkaesque because they end up tripping themselves up with maintaining their image and everything to the point where they're not institutions aren't actually doing the thing they set out to do. And that people always draws personality types that are exploitative anyway, and looking for loopholes and things to exploit. So no system is perfect, and that's what always drives me nuts with a lot of political rhetoric, where people are uh, critical of like welfare programs or stuff like that, and hating on poor people just
Right.
because there's like evidence of fraud here or there, where people are defrauding the system, and it's like, you know what? I'd rather people don't starve to death. So even if a few people are defrauding the system,
Yeah.
it's not costing you that much. I'd be way angrier about those people over there that have all the money and
It's
aren't
all,
paying their workers, right?
yeah, it's all about punching up, not down. Yeah.
Right.
Um, yeah, and unfortunately we're in this time right now where it's not just punching down, it's literally tearing out the floor and the foundation of the building that these people are living in terms of programs um,
Yeah.
and the institutions that, yes, okay, they have their flaws, but yeah, um,
Yeah. It's usually pretty nuanced. And that's one thing I do have to give Trump credit for, is that he has very little in the way of nuance. For as much as he lies, he might be the most honest person in politics because he telegraphs everything he's going to do. The man isn't even really capable of a conspiracy because it's always right there. They just baldly do stuff.
yeah, no, I really, I totally agree. I say to people all the time, I'm like, I don't give much credence to the idea that he has that much of an agenda or a plan. It's just make as much money as he can and do whatever stupid thing comes to his mind
Stay out of
and
prison. Yeah.
stay out of prison, certainly. Um, which, yeah, again, like certain moneyed classes he's been able to do, even though he's not, not to my mind, a successful business person.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. It makes you wonder how much. It never occurred to me before that you could just be such a bald-faced, malicious person that's just an imbecile that just refuses to ever take accountability, and that and therefore you never get it. It's really
yeah,
strange how that works.
it
his
is,
his
and
whole administration is following that same playbook. If you watch any of them being questioned, whether it was Pam Bondi or Kristi Noem or Kash Patel or any of these people, they all do exactly what he does, which is not answer questions and just go on the
yeah,
attack. They just
yep,
refuse to answer entirely, right?
yep. It's a tactic, and it's working pretty well for him, though. Thankfully, so many of them have got lost their jobs, but you just worry how bad the next one's going to be, because it's I know this joke's been around for a while. It's like, what if the next authoritarian despot isn't as imbecilic as this one?
Right.
Who's going to fill these seats next?
Well, I think it only works because of the spectacle of, uh, who he is. We got a reality TV president.
Yeah,
You know,
this whole realization of idiocracy is pretty dumbfounding.
right. Yeah, I mean, because people have said, well, it wouldn't do any good to have Trump removed from office because then we'd have Vance as president. And I'm like, yeah, Vance has the charisma of a damp towel. Like nobody likes that guy.
Yeah, that's what I've been saying too, is that I'm not that worried about that, because it seemed like there's so much hate against him, even in amongst MAGA, and even though MAGA's kind of deteriorating in and of itself now, but you know,
I do enjoy the infighting. That's nice. You love to see that. Yeah.
right. I think the VP was just in town actually a day or two ago. Um,
Yeah.
saw the increased security, and then the next day heard that he was in town.
When people throwing tomatoes at the car as it drove.
I haven't seen any footage or actually heard any of the news. Literally, just somebody said, "Oh yeah, no, we saw a news report
Yeah.
saying he was in town." Yeah, you would
Yeah.
kind of hope or think that Austin Knights might do that, but this town isn't quite as liberal or weird as it used to be. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Uh,
Mm. Yeah. That's a shame. Well, speaking of administration and people that are in it, the conspiracy theory that I'm starting right now is that the new pick to replace Kristi Noem, this guy Mark Wayne Mullen, I think he was created in a laboratory using DNA from a naked mole rat, and he's there to advance the agenda of the mole people who live underground in their bid for world domination.
Is that the wait, not the Eloy, but
Oh, right, yeah. The Eloi
the
were the top
Morlocks,
people.
the
Morlocks, yeah,
Morlocks, yeah.
yeah. Well, you could go a lot of different ways with that. You could go Darrows.
Right. Yes. Let's invoke some more inner Earth stuff. Yeah.
Get some Richard Shaver in there. Yeah.
Yeah. Man, I can't wait to see that uh the new Shaver documentary that I forget the director's name, but see him all the time on Facebook.
Oh, the Dean.
I think you're in the right wheelhouse there.
His
I
name is
can't
Dean something.
think so. Bertram, maybe?
Yeah, I think that's it. We
Okay.
did it.
Sorry, Dean. Didn't mean to misremember your name.
Our brain
Uh,
cells collided in the correct way. Well, see, that's it. Because when we talk about fun stuff, I mean, some of that really is fun. It's just like, like when you had like the Shaver mysteries, and it's always just barely tangential to something really dark. And but
I mean, there's a great example of a weird overlap between so many weird, alternative phenomena from the early days of the UFO uh, phenomenon to with Chrisman and the JFK assassination. I mean, that
yeah,
whole thing that Ken Thomas explored, um, and just the connection to Chrisman, or rather to the Deros tale, and then with Go Rightly's spooks, saucer kooks and saucer spooks and kooks, which I always get the
yeah,
two
yeah,
mixed. Um, uh, with Tal Levesque basically having the same kind of stories, and I mean, it's still there. And then now with the whole Baron von Trump novel,
hmm
that people are drawing parallels to the current administration and family, and
So
just
that's been going on for years, though, and like the idea that Trump's uncle had
mhm,
been the
access
one
to
to like,
the Tesla stuff. Yeah.
right, yeah. I'm sure I have some listeners that are like, okay, you guys lost me, but yeah. Um,
It's all
well,
about
I mean,
falling down the rabbit hole. Yeah.
right. Well, I mean, a lot of this is fun though, like making the connections and playing around with the ideas in your mind, and imagining possibilities, imagining connections where they are, and as a mental exercise, I think it can be great. But I mean, you mentioned earlier the ontological shock of actually understanding what's in the Epstein files, but I think that's the same thing that kind of hit a lot of people during the pandemic, was people that weren't mentally prepared for a conspiratorial narrative, had never encountered it before, really considered it all that hard, or just had their head completely spun by it, right?
Yeah. And I think, th- there's been a lot said about, just the mental state that so many of us found ourselves in that the self-imposed isolation. I mean, I know it wasn't that horrible for some of us. But for some, I'm sure it was a lot worse. And,
hmm
you certainly heard the horror stories, and some relationships didn't survive it because they, marriages, so,
Yeah,
some husbands and, spouses and whatnot suddenly can't get along when they're in, the same space for so long together.
right. Yeah, I mean, my experience was a little different because I was all the way through it an expendable worker, or I mean, essential worker. So I was out there every day, and that was its own kind of very weird and alienating and scary, you know. But yeah, uh,
I,
yeah,
do- I yeah, I think, but I think you're right. I think everything about that time period put people in a potential uh, situation where they might have a lot more time on their hands to think about things that they hadn't thought about before. They certainly were likely spending a lot more time online and being exposed to things that they weren't likely exposed to before. And there was, I think, an increase in conspiratorial thinking for the simple fact that, this was an unprecedented situation, which had been, speculated about plenty and conspiracized plenty ahead of time. I mean, again, with the previous swine flu, Alex Jones and everybody else was blasting their horns like this is the big one.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and uh, you know, test run, whatever, like, these things have happened and are likely going to happen again, which is why, like I was saying, watching 2011's Contagion was so a little reintroducing trauma to my wife and I the other night when we were like going, my
Yeah.
God, this came out, you know, a decade before almost, and it got some things right, not everything, but
Right. Well, yeah, and now we're at a point where measles is back, and
and I mean, I hear cases of other types of similar things to COVID are being detected in China and other places, and just it's a little terrifying to consider
yeah,
going
and
through
that kind,
something like that again, especially
yeah,
now, like given everything that's happened and the radicalization of so many people between then and now, like to try to try to have a lockdown again. Yeah, I don't know. Um, be
yeah,
better
oh
prepared in
yeah,
some ways and not in others.
right, yeah. I think a lot of people just wouldn't put up with it at all. Um, that was a significant boon to a lot of the more authoritarian types, as as an example of state overreach, I guess, and in their minds. Also, a great example there of sometimes people are conspiracy theorists because they don't know how anything in particular works. There's kind of like the amateur ones, like the online ones now, where like people would talk about studies that were done and isolate out of context quotes from people that were doing studies on diseases and how they travel and stuff. And like, see, they were planning it. They were planning it the whole time. It's like, no, man, they were trying to keep that stuff from spreading. They were tracking it so that they know what the next thing is, right?
Right. Yeah.
Um, and incidentally, that's a lot of programs that Trump dismantled as soon as he was in office. You know? So
Yeah. Yeah. So
yeah,
much has been undone.
yeah, yeah. But yeah. So we're all doomed, and
It often it does feel like that, but I do try to be uncharacteristically optimistic. Um, I think humanity is resilient. The planet is much more resilient than we give it credit, and I think we have the potential to be much more innovative, uh, and have shown that to be the case plenty of times. And sometimes out of the worst experiences come the greatest advancements and changes.
yeah.
So we're we're due for some new paradise, right?
Well, I do. I'm with you on that. Honestly, I do feel like there has to be a moment where people are just tired and just want to recognize their neighbors and walk down the street and not have to question the motivation of everyone they meet or question what's real and what's not. Um, so I think we're coming out of a fog. It seems like the second round of the Orange Menace is is it's like it doesn't have the same. doesn't hit the same as the kids would say these days. It doesn't have the same impact. It's less shocking now, even though it's so much more terrible. And all the people are so inept that are running the show, but they're still winning somehow. But it just kind of has you like, yeah, I think everybody's going to get real tired of this at some point, and we're all just going to kind of collectively start disregarding the old power structures and turn away from it and turn towards each other. It's something has got to happen where that coalesces, and I feel like we're closer to it now. I really do.
I agree. It's hard for me to conceptualize it or envision it, and that's a
I don't think
failure
it's
of
going to
my
be
own
one moment,
imagination.
you know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
maybe over time. Um, yeah, I hope so.
it might take like a really big solar flare, and then none of us can get online anymore, and we have to go out.
A Snake Plissken moment where somebody flips the EMP switch.
Yeah,
Yeah, but yeah, that's a natural, so like a yeah, the solar flare version is probably preferable. Though
yeah,
I'm sure there'll be plenty of conspiracy theories about that as well.
yeah.
So,
The Three Eye Atlas will come back and
oh shit,
shut off our power.
Avi Loeb was right. Fuck.
Nobody saw that coming.
It's because it snuck up behind us.
Yeah, it came around the sun and came back behind us. Yeah,
Oh man.
it was just hiding behind the moon and waiting for its opportunity to pounce.
Yeah, there's a guy I feel like he I just kind of write him off as being like, no, he really loves the attention. Either that or he does have an agenda for that he's working for somebody. The fact that he was so involved in Reagan's SDI, Strategic Defense Initiative, really makes me go, not
Hmm,
so sure about that guy.
hmm.
He comes across as just such a nice, friendly guy, and aside from the occasional uh, untoward comment, but he just seems to really like the limelight. Seems to
Yeah,
my feeling.
yeah. But next time we get some interstellar object, I think people are gonna. It's kind of a boy that cried wolf kind of situation. But I don't know. It's worked out for him so far.
Yeah, and I mean the AI slot machines were going completely ape shit. I mean, I was really shocked just how much. I mean, I guess it's probably this way with anything that if I just do a search for, find me AI slop on such and such random topic, but there was just so much. But then again, that's something that obviously taps into fear and sensationalism
Yeah,
and awe, the idea of oh well maybe finally we're gonna have first contact.
yeah,
Um, no, that's happening on my birthday with Disclosure Day, right?
yeah. Well, I was speaking of such. When you do your weekly news roundups, the weird news roundups, and that must get tougher these days, like because so many of them are slop, and there's. I feel like all news media is clogged with a lot of sensationalistic clickbait and stuff like that. I've found it more difficult to find weird stories that aren't complete garbage. You manage to
Yeah,
find them okay, but
well,
it must be hard.
I feel lucky that, I definitely rely on the work of others, like the different news editors at anomalous.com. Patrick Queish had founded that with Dennis Stacy. Dennis Stacy's no longer with us, but he's somebody who was he used to live in San Antonio, Texas, and was the editor of the MUFON UFO Journal for a while. And he and Patrick Queish, who's up in the Northeast, and Patrick's been involved in the mainstream publishing environment for a long time. They started their own anomalous books, but with anomalous.com, so I rely on them, but also my friends, friends
Right.
like you and others, are feeding the algorithms, and I see it, and that's really where I get most of it. I've tried many tactics over the years of like using, search engine alert systems, but that's all just gummed up now.
Right.
Um, but you're absolutely correct that there are a number of uh things. Just recently, there's been a few things that have come across my feed that got past other people that I'm like, really, you republished this? And I think there was an episode of the show where I was like, well, as much as I had to wade through this AI slop video, I did actually feel like I learned some things, but it also really depressed me because it was about the idea of AI being the great filter for why to explain the Fermi paradox and why we don't see evidence of all these other alien civilizations that should be out there in the vastness of the cosmos. It's because they all create AI and they all get doomed.
Yeah.
But and we're at that phase. But maybe that's too dystopian, too end of the worldish.
Yeah.
But
It's
it is
very
a
speculative.
challenge.
I found that overall so speculative, and so much of science is kind of like that,
Yeah,
where
yeah.
it's like, all right, we're accepting as a premise that there are alien civilizations that already existed that have already died out, and it was probably because of this very thing that we're doing right now.
Right.
It's like,
First it was nuclear weapons, and now it's
right,
AI. Yeah.
yeah, and it's like, okay, but what are you basing it on? Is there any objective evidence of, no, okay, we're all speculating. And it's really funny because I think uh a lot of what modern times have revealed to a lot of people is how much the planet is based on, our societies are based on just speculative kind of vibes almost. It's like the economy is based on a lot of speculation. Prices are set because of what may happen or what people guess is probably going to happen.
Yeah.
It,
Yeah.
it just feels like there's such a house of cards to a lot of our power structures, and uh, and it's getting shaky. It's getting shakier by the moment, and people can see through it in ways that they never used to be able to. Um, so maybe we can all just start finding those things that we can agree on about about the shakiness of our whole society, and then work to build something better. You
Yeah.
know,
Absolutely. It really needs to be all about coming together and envisioning and manifesting the most positive future for all of us and 7 generations down the line. Um, and AI can play a part of that, but like any new technology, we need to use it uh, really carefully, using our best moral and ethical compasses. Um,
well, I'm sure that people like Mark Andreessen and Musk and Peter Thiel have that covered.
oh, good.
We're in good hands. Good, cold, clammy hands.
Uh, yeah, yeah. Well, on that cheery note,
Yeah,
uh,
you took the words out of my mouth. Yeah, we should probably wrap this up. But this has been. I'm glad been able to laugh during this, because it is a
me
lot of
too.
dark stuff,
Yeah,
and I think we do need a little bit of gallows humor here and there. But I think we left it on kind of a hopeful note.
yeah. The back of my mind has been, I want to see an AI slop video of Jeff the Talking Mongoose infesting the White House and driving Trump crazy. There
Right.
we go.
Yeah, or we could just, us magicians out there can manifest that and make it happen. Uh,
Absolutely.
um, but yeah, no, I think this has been really good, and I was about to say something and I lost it.
Well, it's been a pleasure getting to meet you and talk with you, and I'm looking forward to the next conversation. And anytime you want to talk on or off the air, just let me know, and I'm available to chat and see what's going on in your world.
All right, awesome. So if people are looking for you online, should they go to anomalyarchives.com? Yeah,
Anomalyarchives.org. I think we might
org,
still have the
right?
.com. Anomalyarchives.org is the nonprofit founded in 2003. Over 7,000 physical books on a wide range of anomalous topics, thousands of periodicals. Still looking for the most rare of anomalies, the affordable rent in Austin, Texas, and if folks if can go to my personal website. I don't really post to it that much, and it's mostly just personal stuff, but occasionally weird links. But that's smileslewis.com. And yeah, as mentioned, I've been streaming Anomaly Radio since last century. That's anomalyradio.com, which currently redirects to a WordPress site, but that's okay. And
Yeah.
and then on the Anomaly Radio channel, folks can hear the AP Strange show. Thank you for
Yeah.
letting us restream your podcast and many other shows of a wide variety of topics, lots of paranormal and some parapolitical. And yeah, thank you for having me on. Really enjoyed it.
All right. You're very welcome. And talk to you soon.